All right, folks, I think in essence of time, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We'll get Adam to come in once he makes it through the door and let him take over the rest of the program. My name is Gene Jones. I'm executive director for a nonprofit called CannEd, Cannabis Education. I'm going to hold off my opening comments until we go through the opening session so we can get started on this workshop. Our first presentation, I'm actually going to turn it over to Brian Dickerson and let Brian serve as the moderator for this session, since you know the speakers and can make the intro, and we'll go ahead and get started on that. And then after that time, I think Adam should be up here, and we'll let him take over the program from there. So all yours, sir.
Thank you, Gene. I'm with Star Manufacturing Hemp. We're in LaBelle, Florida. We have an extraction facility and a grow facility, and then we have a white label manufacturing facility, FDA registered, CGMP certified. And what we have that I think is unique in the hemp space is our scientists have been able to extract what we call hempflavin, but it is the flavonoids from the actual plant. So there are 0 cannabinoids, 0 THC in this plant product, extract, and it is just the flavonoids. I'm going to let Morgan Coffey at the end of this discussion, our Chief Science Officer, talk about the specifics on the flavonoids and extraction. I'm going to do a minor presentation right now, then I'll turn it over to Dr. Donato Barillo, and Dr. Donato Barillo is attending this via Zoom. Dr. Barillo is the clinical investigator for a clinical study that was performed using the hempflavin product. If you're not familiar with flavonoids, flavonoids are in every fruit and vegetable. It's what makes things green, red. If you see Nature's Balance, Nature's Beauty, they got their own products, the greens and the reds that are advertised on TV. This is specifically taking the flavonoids out of specific hemp varieties. Not every hemp variety is going to have flavonoids, and so that's part of the uniqueness with the extraction of the flavonoids. The flavonoid industry right now is projected to be over $4 billion by 2025. It is growing not only in this space, but in the normal vegetable and fruit space. Italy is one of the countries that is the foremost leader with flavonoids. And when you think of the tomatoes, you think of the wine, that's part of the reason why. They all have strong flavonoid content. What is the reason for taking flavonoids? What is the reason for hempflavin? Well, the biggest benefit that we see is the anti-inflammatory properties that the flavonoids have. It allows for great recovery from athletes, whether it's human or whether it's animals and dogs and or horses. Veterans can use it. Veterans do not have to worry about testing positive because it has no THC in it. So it is a huge benefit for veterans. Truck drivers, same with them. Any profession that cannot have THC, this product can provide the anti-inflammatory relief without having to worry about a THC hit. What we learned during the study that Dr. Barillo will go into is when we were trying to just tackle and see how it would handle acute and chronic pain, we also were able to discover with participants that it was healing with migraines, horrible headaches, and other pains and ailments that we were not expecting. The hempflavin can be in a variety of forms. Sublingual tincture is a common form. The sublingual tincture can be taken by humans under the mouth. You can take it under the dogs under the mouth, and horses. That's what we've used it on. We also have the derm spray that works actually on the actual animal. What you're seeing right here is Zara. You're seeing a December 9th picture up top. She had a mange attack from a parasitic tick. She was down to almost no weight. She was rescued off the kill floor at Dade County. And if you see the bottom picture, that is her on January 15th. That is after taking the hempflavin orally every day and having the spray. With this example, it has been used on many other dogs since then. She was from the Big Cypress German Shepherd Rescue, but we've worked with other rescues as well. This dog is known as Rosita. Rosita on the left picture was in September. She was at the Dallas Kill Shelter in the kill floor. She had a fractured neck, and on the left side you can see her heart. Her heart was over twice the size of a normal dog. When we took Rosita in October 10th, the treatment was basically hempflavin to help her without pain, because she couldn't take any medication for her heartworms. So it was simply to give her relief of pain. The video you're seeing on the top right is of December 23rd, 2001, a little over 2 months since she was in the care taking the hempflavin. The image on the lower right is the December 23rd x-ray, and that is the x-ray that the vet took after I sent the video, because we sent the video to him and he's like, there's no way that dog should be able to do that. We went back in, he took the x-ray. That x-ray shows a normal size heart. So with the horses, there's various reasons we can use it on horses. This is a non-cannabinoid, non-THC product. So many horses in the horse disciplines are not allowed to have cannabinoids or THC. This product can be used on both. This specific horse right here on December 30th had the cut down to the bone. Skin was an inch apart. There was no way you could stitch it. There was no way you could really do any type of treatment on it. What we applied is the hempflavin mud, which is a charcoal, ozonated, activated mud with the hempflavin in it, and also received the hempflavin tincture orally directly to the horse under the tongue. The horse dosage is at a 900 micrograms. The dog dosage is at a 100 micrograms. And we have the human dosage in a 100 microgram and a 300 microgram. So the horse is getting 900 micrograms orally, and the derm is a 300 microgram. If you look at the bottom picture to the left, that is what the mud does. It cakes onto the injury. The bentonite clay that is in it dries it out, while then the hempflavin and the ozonation, as activated charcoal, pulls out the wound. When you look at the right picture, that is January 21st, 2021. So from December 30th to January 21st, that is how that wound healed on the hempflavin. So when we were doing all this, our own studies and our own knowledge on our animals, at the same time, Dr. Donato Barillo, we were speaking with him last October, and then he went forward in November and did his clinical study on the actual use of the flavonoids on chronic pain. And I'll turn it over to him here briefly so then he can discuss his findings and what he actually did. But the reason we did this is our COO, for example, suffers from horrible kidney stones, and he was having a kidney stone episode, and when he was taking the kidney stone episode, he actually took the hempflavin. And after he took the hempflavin, it was the first time he did not have to actually go to the ER to get Dilaudid or some other type of pain medication to pass his kidney stone. After that happened, that's when we sought out the need to do a clinical trial, and that is where Dr. Donato Barillo steps in. And Dr. Barillo, you're on Zoom, but if you can take over control, I will just click the slides for you and you can move forward. Hold on, Doc.
Can you hear me?
They can hear you now. We're good.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes? All right, very good. Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Mr. Jones. I wish I could be there in person. Unfortunately, I had to cover clinic. I have 12 nurse practitioners, and the clinic that I had to cover was in Las Vegas, so it's not as though it's a hardship type of tour, but I do wish I could be there, and I apologize for not being there in person. When first, It was the anecdotal testimonials, pretty much as far as, hey doc, this stuff really works. I was like, well, okay. But my background is being board certified in preventive medicine with epidemiology and biostatistics background. And so anecdotal and testimonial just really doesn't do it for me. And also by way of background, I do a lot of occupational medicine, which is where I am now, occupational medicine clinic. And also as what they call a medical review officer. So in the world of occupational medicine, we see injuries, and after injuries, we get post-accident drug screens. So the comment by Brian with regard to no THC and no cannabinoids, that's very important for me as a clinician, as an occupational medicine clinician, because as mentioned in the world of DOT, CDL drivers, it's very important in the world of post-accident injuries, and post-accident drug screens is very important. And for me, as an occupational medicine physician, we see quite a bit of repetitive injuries of the upper extremities, also lifting injuries. And so we see the sprained strings of the back and the shoulders, and we see the underlying degenerative changes. And so we certainly see the arthritic changes of the big joints and the little joints and of the back. So when I was approached by Brian with flavonoids, which admittedly I had to myself go back and research and search the literature with regard to what they actually do, I was really intrigued by it. So I said, well, Brian, if you want to do this, next slide, please.
Can you slow the slides, please? There.
Another one. They're perfect. And so I said, well, Brian, if we want to do this, we can put together a pilot study. If you go back one, we can put together a pilot study, and we can see if it does something which is clinically significant. And so the previous slide there you go, perfect. This slide is the results of the study, and I don't expect anybody to read that small print, but this is the abstract poster that was accepted by the American College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine, ACOMS. ACOMS is the largest occupational medicine organization. Anybody who does occupational medicine knows ACOMS. And we were accepted as an abstract for our study, and it was published and presented at AHOC, which is the American Occupational Health Conference last month in Salt Lake City. So we put together something which I feel is reputable and which is based on actual data rather than testimonials and anecdotal type of evidence. And so this has also been accepted by the Physiatry, which is Pain Management, PM&R, conference, which is in New Orleans at the end of this month. And so these are peer-reviewed. I feel very confident in the fact that it's been peer-reviewed. And so I'd like to present what our data actually is. Next slide, please. So again, this is a pilot study. And as a pilot study, I'm going to leave the extraction aspect of it to Morgan. As I mentioned, under Roman numeral number 3 there, I mean, we have no THC or cannabinoid in it, which is very important to me as a MRO. It's a dietary supplement. It has not been through the stages of FDA acknowledgement as a medicinal. And for dosing, we were using a tincture, as Brian had mentioned. Now, with the tincture, I believe, and Brian, I think you said that you're working on a tongue lozenger also, or something which is addition to a tincture?
A tablet.
Tablet, okay. Because that's one of the things I'm going to discuss in just a little bit. The tincture allowed for some mistakes in dosing, and those mistakes were on my part in trying to explain to people how to dose, because because the tincture is delivered with a dropper under the tongue, swished around, and you know how a tincture is measured in an eyedropper is a little bit, for lack of a better term, sloppy. But we can talk about that in just a little bit. So the participants were contacted, had a pre-study questionnaire, and then afterwards were followed at 10 days and 30 days. Next slide, please. And so basically we had 65 volunteers, not paid, but they did receive their supplement for free. So we had 65 starting out. Of that, we ended up with 46 that actually participated, which anytime you do a survey, anytime you do any kind of research, you got to expect that you're going to lose some people. I mean, if you don't, then I would call into question the study. So we lost a few to start out with. Of the 46, we had 24 women, 22 men, and the ages range from 31 to 90 with a mean of 60, no pediatrics, nobody younger than 30. So we started out with that. And as I mentioned, there was the pre-survey screen, and then 10 days and 30 days. And we dosed at 300 mics and 100 mics, which I'll get to in just a minute here. The participants suffered from a variety of degenerative pathology, osteoarthritic ailments of both the large joint and small joints. And when you think of the back, we think about facets, and we think about how the spine bends and twists and turns on those facets, and those facets are joints. And they're small joints, and they can also have arthritic changes. And so we gotta keep that in mind. So arthritis can be of the large joints, the shoulders, knees, hips, or it can be of the small joints, facets, hands, elbows, etc., wrist. Next slide. And so these are our results. And if you look at the first column where it says 300 micrograms or 100 micrograms per day, that's basically all of the respondents lumped into one. And I think that's probably the most important column, rather than breaking it down to the 100 or 300. But that column shows that there was a response. This is a pilot study, and again, it shows a response. Do we have confidence intervals? This is a significant power of the study. That can be debatable. However, the bottom line is we did see something that was positive, a very good response. We saw some 90% response rate with a decrease in quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative meaning we saw a response from 8 to 2 out of 10 for pain, and qualitative meaning that we saw a response in the activity that that person was able to conduct and their quality of life. So quantitative and qualitative improvement. Next slide, please. With this study, we also had no adverse effects, which is just as important, if not more important. And I think that if we follow it out further, beyond 30 days, and we call the participants, we can make sure that we don't have any adverse effects. But I think that is goal number one of any supplement or anything that you're trying to study, is to make sure you don't have any adverse effects. The second bullet point there talks about the dosing and the mistaken dosing. And Brian's been very kind to me because we just put down poor provider communication, but that is basically me as far as not having the correct methodology and telling the person how to put it under their tongue and swish it around. The next bullet point, again, big picture is 90% type of response rate in both quantitative and qualitative outcome, which is very important. And as Brian will mention, there were some other benefits. I, as a research-oriented type of clinician, I try to pick a ailment that I think that the medication is targeted towards, and that's why I picked the osteoarthritic aspects of large joints and small joints. The other benefits of the supplement with regard to headaches or postmenopausal, menopausal type of symptoms, I'll leave that to Brian to mention as far as testimonials. The QR that you see on that page, that'll take you to the full study, which also includes the patients. Obviously, it's redacted, so there isn't any information on them that can't be read. And that will inform the reader with regard to the types of osteoarthritic joint pathology that they had. Next slide, please.
Hey, Doc, we're going to have to cut this off, so if you could just shorten up about 2 more minutes, because then Morgan Coffey needs to finish his presentation.
This slide is just the literature that supports the anti-inflammatory effect of Cannaflavins A and B, which is the major component of the supplement that we use for the study. Next, please. And this final slide is just the cellular cytokine aspect of where the action takes place. And it's at the inhibition of prostaglandin synthesis, which is an inflammatory type of marker. There's COX-1, COX-2 enzyme types of inhibition, which is where you see indomethacin or FIHCE, which was taken off the market. That's where you see that type of inhibition. So it basically inhibits the inflammatory response. That's why if the inflammation's gone, you have a decrease in pain, you have a decrease in swelling, and you have an improvement in the quality of the patient's life. So with that, that's just a basic overview. Again, the QR will take you to the full study. And I thank Gene once again for allowing us to present. And thank you, Brian. And I'll pass it on to Morgan.
Thanks, Doc. So the QR code that's on here, that actually has all of the examples. If you guys want to hit that, we can also give that to you after the meeting. And it has all of the study examples from the patients as far as what their actual abilities were after using hempflavin. I'm going to pass this over to Morgan Coffey. He's our Chief Science Officer, so that he can discuss the flavonoids and his experience with them. Morgan?
So the first thing that I want to talk about is just the plant aspect of this. So there's flavonoids in many, many different plants. So there's over 5,000 that have been discovered. The big thing that we look into is the 23 that we found in the cannabis plant. So once we found these flavonoids, we were able to extract them and use those for the actual hemp flavin. The largest and most important ones that we found for this pain relief aspect of it is Cannaflavin A and B. So with those, we've found through other studies as well that they're 30 times stronger than any NSAID, so your aspirins or anything like that. So that's been an incredible part of this journey through it all. These flavonoids in the plant, they bring in pollinators, they're cell protectors, they regulate cell growth. All of these things, when you look at it, transfer directly into the human body. So that's what excited us about all of this. So the same things that they do in the plant, we're finding that they're doing in the human body as well. Next slide.
Oh, that's it.
That's it. Okay, perfect.
The flavanoid. So, Morgan, why don't you tell them as far as what you've discovered as far as the flavonoids, what you've seen and how they work with the product?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a symbiosis. So the biggest part of this is, the flavonoids go in, they're instantly breaking through that cell walls, filling them up, protecting them the same way that it does in the plants. So passing through the blood-brain barrier instantly, we've looked into transporting other drugs and other things into the body, and we found that these flavonoids are almost race cars for that. Speeds up everything.
And what is the speed that you've seen as far as the actual flavonoids reacting to the body as far as breaking the barrier?
We're looking at less than 5 minutes. So this pain relief is coming at a very quick speed. So instead of something taking time to have to digest, get into the bloodstream, we're making that happen. We're letting that happen in less than 5 minutes.
And then with the derm products, what is the basis behind the hempflavin with the derm products?
Sure. I mean, it's just cellular regrowth. So anything that is burnt or hair that's missing or any kind of it's an antibacterial, antimicrobial. So spraying that on any spots like that, we're seeing results very quickly in animals and humans.
There you go.
Any questions from the group? quick question. I saw on the slide that there was no THC and no CBD, and there's not a lot of mention of the endocannabinoid system. Can you explain the interaction with the ECS and how outside of the other two chief cannabinoids we've heard about that this is different and might actually pass through a different market, it might appear?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the most important parts about it, because anybody can take it. We don't have to worry about any of that drug testing or any of those things. So, it's just the flavonoids working the way that flavonoids work.
Okay. All right.
I think the site and mechanism of action is that prostaglandin inhibition, the slide that I sort of flew through. I mean, that's where it really happens, and that's where Barrett and Weiss, that's where they identified, inhibition of that prostaglandin synthesis, which is driving inflammation at the cellular level. And that's been very well studied. Prostaglandin PGE2 has been very well studied. That's where indomethacin, that's where Vioxx, that's where Celebrex, that's where it all works. That's where you get the NSAID action. And so if you use this to substitute at that site of action, then you don't have the side effects that you do with the NSAIDs.
Thank you very much for that. We will conclude that part of the presentation and move to the next section. Dr. Hermann will talk about the effect of high concentration of cannabinoids in analysis of pesticides in cannabis and its products. Challenges as market expands into more edible and beverages. Take it away.
How does this thing work?
Green.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. My name is Harry Behzadi. I'm President and CEO of the AccuScience laboratory. What we do cannabis and medical marijuana testing. And I'm a veteran of the environmental testing for the last 30 years. About 2.5 years ago, I decided this is not for me anymore. This is the next big thing. So I opened up a lab in Eustis, Florida, and started testing cannabis and later on medical marijuana after we got our certification. Today I'm going to talk about pesticide. Pesticide is a huge issue when you're talking about cannabis. And what we're going to talk about the suppression of the pesticide in analysis of the suppression of the pesticide during the analysis in cannabis. As a veteran of, as I said, as a veteran of the environmental market, I've done tens of thousands of the pesticide in various matrices, in water, in soil, in air, in plant tissue, in animal tissue. And I thought, when I came to this industry, I thought, I know a thing or two about pesticide. Oh man, I was wrong. And this really humbled me, actually. And the reason I'm standing in front of you today is because we screwed up. It takes a man to stand up in front of the crowd and says, we screwed up. The reason we screwed up is one of the MMTCs, they were planning to use us. They gave us a sample of the oil samples to analyze it for pesticide. We identified the pesticide, but we didn't identify the right amount. And we as a PhDs, we are used to be to the rejection and failures. And it makes me, it got me start thinking. When we started the lab, there was a lot of technical note by different instrumentation manufacturer. Nobody talked about suppression, actually. They were all testing, okay, you do it this way, and you could analyze all the pesticide, no issue. So, I started, after that, rejection, I started digging into the internet, and I started finding articles about the suppression of the, pesticide by cannabinoids. So, with that said, let's talk about, cannabis chemical composition. Obviously, cannabis is exceptionally complex plant, as you guys discussed that. It contains psychoactive or non-psychoactive cannabinoids, such as THC and CBD. It has a well abundances of the terpenes and flavonoids. And it has other things that you find in other plants, such as starch, fat, wax, sugar, chlorophyll. So that makes analysis of cannabis very complex, actually. So the challenges in analysis of the pesticide in cannabis is, one is the matrix, actually. And the matrix could actually give you a poor analyte recovery and reproducibility, chromatographic interference, suppression, or enhancement. As a result, the concentration that you find in the cannabis samples that you're doing, it might not be real. The other problem that creates analysis of the pesticide in cannabinoids, you have a high concentration of the cannabinoids in percentage level, and you are looking at very low parts per billion pesticide. In Florida, we are dealing with very low limits for pesticide. Most of the pesticide in flowers are at 0.1 parts per million or 100 parts per billion. We have a couple of them actually at much lower, at 0.01 parts per million. So we are looking at a very low concentration of this pesticide in a very complex matrix. But before we start, and I talk to you guys about what we did after that screw up, is let's talk about the regulation on pesticide. Actually, the pesticide is being regulated in agriculture. Pesticide in the United States in agriculture is being regulated by US EPA. But prior to that, actually, and US EPA, as you know, is started in 1970s. But the pesticide regulation, actually, the act was back from 1950s. There was a Congress act by the name of FIFRA, actually. And so the pesticide has been regulated by the government for the last 60 or 70 years. But what makes it very difficult for this thing, cannabis is federally still illegal. So EPA says, I'm not going to touch this. I have no, I'm going to have nothing to do with this thing. So ultimately, the decision is going to lay on the states. State has to regulate the amount of the pesticide, what type of pesticide you analyze, the level of the pesticide. And as you know, from state to state, it's going to be much, much different. So that creates an inconsistency among the pesticide. What it means that, in Florida, we analyze about 60 pesticides. One of the pesticides that is very, we find it a lot in the samples in Florida is diazonine. And in the state of Massachusetts, they only analyze about 10 pesticides. Diazonine is not one of those pesticides. So what happens is a manufacturer or a grower grows some hemp, manufacture some CBD product, and he ships it into Florida. So, and without even analyzing for diazonine. And in general, in the United States, the consumers, when they go to a pharmacy and they take a bag of the CBD, since they're paying tax on it, and they have a nice label, a nice packaging, they trust it, without even nobody even checking that if this contains any kind of for safety. Another problem is the FDA. FDA hasn't done anything about any kind of the CBD product. A lot of the CBD product that you see on the shelves are only you see the amount of the CBD or the cannabinoids there, or CBG or CBC, and nobody is checking it for the safety. Hopefully, we have a Food Supplement Act a couple of years ago that has started monitoring all the kind of this, supplements. Hopefully, FDA would start on that. So this is a little bit background on the legality of these things. We have a way to go. Now, how do we analyze the pesticide? The instrumentation that we use is the LC-MS, actually. The LC-MS is a great instrument. It has a nice sensitivity. You could separate a lot of the pesticide, and you can detect them. The LC stands for, it's a chromatographic instrumentation. LC stands for liquid chromatography. And the liquid chromatography is a lot better than the gas chromatograph, because a lot of these pesticides are very unstable. Thermally, they are very fragile, and they are non-volatile. So LC is a great instrument to get these things separated. And obviously, once they get separated, it goes to the mass spec, and that generates a three-dimensional data that can be provided valuable information such as a molecular weight, structure, identity, quantity. The mass spec is basically, for non-chemists, is something like a fingerprint of the human being. Once every chemical, every organic compounds, when it gets into the mass spectrometer, it breaks down, we call it a fragmentation pattern. And each compound has its own unique fragmentation pattern. It's exactly like a human fingerprint. Each human has a unique fingerprint. So that makes it a very good instrument for identification and quantitation of the pesticide. Now, don't freak out. This is what we call a triple quad, basically. And it is important, the reason I put that slide here, it's important to talk about what is causing the suppression of the pesticide. So the first one, we have what we will call is 3Q1, which is to separate the precursor ions from everything else, and it shoots the chemicals into the collision cell. Once those chemicals, they get into the collision cells, they get bombarded with electron, and they get fragmented, and then they will send into the Q3. And the Q3 basically, it selected only the product ions, and it sends it to the detector, and it gets detected. Now, we talk about the cannabinoids, and so there is a competition. When you have a cannabinoid with the pesticide you are analyzing, you have a high concentration of the cannabinoids there, and you have a very small amount of pesticide. And there is a competition that who's going to be volatilized and get into the Q1, and that is the reason of the suppression, because of the very high concentration of the pesticide. Well, I'm sorry, the cannabinoids. So after that rejection, when we started the lab, we only could buy a standard from the manufacturer by law. The highest concentration standard of the cannabinoids we could buy was 1,000 ppm. No matter you have a DEA license, you have anything, you cannot get anything higher. So by then, after that, when we started, finally we had access to some high concentration CBD or cannabis product. So we designed an experiment there, and what we did is we had a flower with a 33%, that's a nice flower, 33% THCA. We had a distillate with a delta 9 at 89%, and we had an isolate at a concentration with a CBD concentration of 99%. So what we did, we got these samples, we extract them, we analyze them for pesticide, and we find no pesticide. So the next part of the experiment, I told the analysts that we're going to spike all these samples with pesticide. the way we make our standard, our calibration, and we spiked all these samples at the mid-level of the curve with the pesticide. We ran the samples after we had spiked them with the pesticide, and here, do we have a laser here? Yeah, right there. Oh, okay. So after we we spiked them, we analyzed them, and this was the results. So I got, basically no recovery. Hey, folks, this was a sample. We spiked the pesticide to it. We see no pesticide. So I went to an analyst. I said, "Are you sure you added the spike?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "No, I don't think so." I said, "Why don't you spike it again?" And I told the supervisor, "Watch and make sure that she's spiking it," basically. I didn't believe it. It was shocking because we are adding pesticides to these samples, and we are finding nothing, basically. One of the pesticides you see here, bifenthrin, this pesticide is, you see it a lot in Florida. We had 0% recovery when we run it at 1x. So she added again, and we analyzed it, we got the same results. And we said, okay. So what we did is we diluted the sample 10 times. After we diluted the sample, so as you dilute the samples, you're also diluting the matrix. So the flower with the 33% THCA is not the 33% THCA anymore. It's 3.3% THCA. We started seeing, this is the green light, is at 10x. We started seeing some recovery, but still not good. You're talking about 20 to 40x, 40% recovery. I said, okay, let's dilute this more. So the line you see, the red line, is it the red line? Yeah. The red line is actually, we diluted it 100 times. So now your matrix, instead of 33%, is 0.33% THCA. So now we start seeing some nice recovery. We went one step further, and we spiked it 500 times. And then we all start seeing all these pesticides at a very good recovery. And that was a jaw-dropping moment for me, actually, that we had to dilute these samples 500 times to be able to look at to be able to find the pesticide. Again, we did the full list, and the effect is not the same for all the pesticides. As you see here, this is still, we're talking about the 33% THCA. We have some better recoveries here at 1x, and the reason for it is for the, when I show you guys the volatility of these pesticides, some of them are, when they are fighting with the THCA to get into the ion source, basically, they're winning, they are getting there, actually. The other ones, they're not getting it. So, but the same pattern happened here. As we dilute these samples, we start seeing more and more and better recoveries, which some of them are perfect recovery, 100% when you're doing that 500x, 500 times dilution. Now, this was the flower. We went next to the distillate at 89% delta-9 THC. Flat line here. Basically, you extract those distillate and you run it at 1x. No matter how much pesticide you have, you're going to get ND. You're not going to have any pesticide there. After that, we diluted 10 times. Some recoveries, but not good. We're talking about 20% recoveries. Obviously, some of them are better, not all of them. The bifenthrin, again, you see that bifenthrin a lot in Florida. And, at 1x, 0% recovery. At 10x, basically maybe 5 or 10% recovery. We did the same thing. We diluted it 100 times and 500 times. And as you see, once you start, diluting these things at 100 times, since the level of the delta-9 THC is getting lower and lower, you have a better recovery, and you almost have 100% recovery on these things. The same thing, you see, the problem with it, again, you see a flat line. This is the rest of the pesticide. This is the list of pesticides we do in Florida. And as you see, again, there was no recovery. This is very dangerous. You're taking a sample, you're extracting it at one exit. Analytical chemists usually dilute the samples if the concentration is above the curve. If you run it, usually you run it at 1x, there is nothing detected, you decide, okay, it's ND. But here it's really, no matter how much pesticide you have, because of the suppression, you're not going to see those pesticides. Now we went back to actually the isolate of the CBD of 99%. We got some, that was a different story, a little bit different story, but not for all the pesticide. We started recovering some, a little bit better at the 1x, but for some of the pesticide you see here, you have a very, very low recoveries. The same thing you're going to see. You're going to have that CBD product on the shelf. Does that really have that pesticide or not? You have to question that. The same thing here. Again, with the CBD product, you have a lot less competition. Again, that comes to the suppression. So what do we do? And, as I said, as a laboratory who've done a lot of pesticide in different matrices, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, actually, a lot of cleanup methods for cleaning up the fatty tissues, for the wax, for chlorophyll. But none of that cleanup method works on cannabinoids. So that is off the, take that off the list. We as a laboratory, after I learned the hard way, we dilute each sample that we get. Fortunately, the LC-MS has a very good sensitivity, and you could see a very low concentration. And with diluting the sample at 10x, we really easily we could achieve fluid limits. So for the flowers, we dilute every sample twice. At 2 different dilutions, one at 10x, one at 50x, to be able to see if there is any suppression, any pesticide. For the distillate or a high concentration, something like a vapes, we dilute them actually we make 3 dilutions, at 10x, at 50x, and 200x. And we are able to evaluate actually if there is any pesticide. And if we detect any pesticide, what we do is then we do a post-spike and we do with a standard addition. One thing I should mention that after I did this study, I presented that to one of the instrument manufacturers, and I asked them the question. You see a lot of technical note, application notes, nobody talks about this suppression. And I asked them, how did you guys come up with these application notes? Did you have access to these high concentration cannabinoids? I know the answer is, the only way you can have access to the high concentration cannabinoids is you are working in an MMTC, or you are a laboratory who's approved or certified by the state, or you have a medical marijuana license that you could go and purchase that. So the answer was that they couldn't give me the answers. So most likely, most of the instrument manufacturers, they never had access to this high concentration of the cannabinoids to do any kind of R&D. So it is very important. I'm sorry, I'm going out of here. It's very important for the instrument manufacturer to get access to this high concentration cannabinoids and do some R&D. And this is something, I've got to tell you that, I'm going to finish it up with that. This is not something that you cannot brush it under the rug, basically. You analyze the sample, is ND, okay, we are happy, we could put it on the shelf. So what happens is we are seeing a lot of edible products coming to the market. We're seeing a lot of CBD, THC drinks are coming to the market. And so what happens is when you have these edibles or these beverages, what happens is you're taking actually the isolate or the distillate, and you dilute in it. So eventually, if the concentration of a pesticide is high enough, you're going to end up in your edible. And when you analyze it, you're going to find that pesticide, and then you are losing millions of dollars, basically. So that is a dilemma that has to be addressed. I think I went over my thing. Ultimately, the goal is to ensure the health and safety of the public and the product. By the way, after we screwed up to finish the story, they gave us a second chance, and we are back in a good grace. Thank you.
Stay there for a second. Are there any questions before you? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was late, by the way. I'm Adam Wick, the CEO of Healthy Hemp Outlet in St. Pete, Florida. We've had an online and retail health and wellness hemp business for 5 years now and have learned a lot and have over 300 online reviews, so there's a ton of anecdotal information there. Next up is Anndrea. She's going to present on hemp food. Why should I eat it? Probably because it was part of the original plan, and we have an endocannabinoid system, I'm sure, but Anndrea's going to be presenting remote and then take questions at the end. So, Anndrea, welcome to the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining this session and hope you're enjoying that sunny Florida weather. I'm based up in Manitoba, Canada. My name is Anndrea Hermann, and I am the Director of Inside Sales for HPS Food and Ingredients. Today, I will be discussing why hemp foods, nutritional properties of hemp seed grain food products, and how you can incorporate this versatile ingredient into your own product. HPS is a hemp seed food leader. We are based in Canada, but contracting directly with both growers in the US and in Canada, a go-to direct North American company for bulk and wholesale hemp seed ingredients. And our team is very active in industry association and working on committees to advance hemp overall, whether that be food, feed, fiber, or in general and or others. Our team definitely has an overall passion for hemp, as do most of you. That's why you're here today. So food safety, this is one of the pillars, top pillars of any food company that is looking at different kinds of certifications depending on what your end customer needs. That may be kosher, organic, non-GMO, halal, and or other certifications that are out there. These food safety systems are under like an FFSC 22000 type of GFSI food standards safety. It's very important to make sure that when you're looking at food or food manufacturing, that these types of safety HACCP protocols have been put in place. Traceability for us is key, tracing all the way from the farm to the final product, variety, land location, when the hemp was grown, where it was grown, and then throughout the process we are testing. So we'll test farmer samples, that's dirty from the field. We'll test prior to going into the cleaning facility, after the grain is cleaned, before we'll bring it into the processing facility, testing throughout the processing itself, and then addition testing at the final product stage. So there's a lot of laboratory cost that goes along with quality assurance and monitoring that throughout and having a system to be able to put the data into. And I could do a whole nother section on what is a C of A and what goes into that, so we will come back for another conference and discuss that further. So now we'll just slip into description and uses of hemp foods. And what are these drivers, or what are driving industry into looking at healthy alternatives or foodstuffs, other foodstuffs that could be aging population? I won't read the list completely through, but these tie down to biological, economics, physical, psychological, social aspects, and different attitudes when we're talking about what matters now in our health-aware consumer framework. This can tie into policy for labeling and different types of claims that you can make on food products. There's a cross-section of the hemp seed, our little golden nugget there, with that harder outer shell and that meaty hemp heart, hulled hemp seed on the inside, all part of the lifeline of this kernel to grow. How can you add hemp as a value to your food product? It is by choice and versatility, so substitution or additives to your current product line. It's nutritious, plant-based, mechanically processed on our side, depending on where you're sourcing from and how they are manufacturing their hemp food ingredients, and then also those nutritional claims and functions, which I will present later on in the presentation. Here's our scope of our food products that we offer, from toasted hemp seed, hulled hemp seed, toasted hulled hemp seed oil, and then those standard hemp powders that you're seeing on the market, that 50%, 33 or 23% protein content based on 100 grams approximately. And these are different levels depending on the milling technology that we're using. And HPS are new products that were launched as the hulled hemp seed powder 65% and hulled hemp seed oil. And as the product names say, these are products that are from hemp seed, hulled hemp seed that have been crushed and milled, and then the oil produced from there, and then the powder comes from the milling process. So to get into some of the uses, cold pressed hemp seed oil and hulled oil, this is a cool culinary oil, so should not be used as a hot fry oil, so more as a drizzle on sauces, marinades, a top drizzle on top of your waffles, popcorn, really good on eggs. You can encapsulate this oil, put it into other products as a carrier oil, right into your smoothies. You can use it directly as a topical for body care or into cosmetics or body care blends, in addition into the companion pet food supplement, depending on the regulations of where your product are being sold, and then also as one of those body care products, topicals for pets, again, depending on the regulations. And that's a changing scope, and there's a whole whack of work that's going on right now when it comes to hemp as a feed and pet food. Hulled, toasted hemp seed, hulled hemp seed. I always say if you can eat one hemp product, what would it be? I say hulled hemp seed, because you're getting the dietary fiber, you're getting the protein, you are getting the additional array of vitamin minerals, and that insoluble dietary fiber. So great product as a standalone itself, but great. All these are great as toppers, baking mixes. Won't read the whole list. Make it into tofu, desserts, bars, into your smoothie, non-dairy cheeses, non-dairy beverages, burgers, meat alternatives, and analogs. So really you can dream it up, it can be here. You could also put this in a food processor, add a little bit more oil, and get yourself a nut-free butter type of peanut butter substitute. Looking at other uses for the powders, again, won't discuss them all, but as you can see from the list, another array of products that can be manufactured or produced from these. And these are all different based on that protein content and somewhat of that color. So the more grittier 23%, I've even seen go into like facial scrubs, and then that 65% is more of that creamy color as you saw from the previous picture. Which ingredient to use, as your food nutritionist will want to kind of drill down on what some of these attributes are depending on your product. So let's say you've got a product high enough in protein, but you want to add some dietary fiber, put in some 23%. Maybe you're looking to replace one of your carrier oils. You could look at hemp seed oil regular with more of that green color, or you could look at the hulled oil with more of that golden type of color. So it really depends on the attributes you want to put in functionally as the nutrition side, also the impact that these different varieties of colors and sensories will have in the end product. So also a big slide, I won't read everything here, but these are the FDA nutritional claims and functions that you can make on certain hemp food products. So for oil, you can talk about how it's cholesterol free, and there are caveats to each one of these claims. So maybe you have to look at what additional claims can be made or what further statements you have to make as you're talking about making these function claims. Hulled hemp seed, you can say cholesterol free, sodium free, high in thiamine, phosphorus, magnesium, zinc, copper, and manganese, and a good source of iron, and vitamin B6. So these will vary depending on the products. The only product right now that does not have an FDA determined reference amount for the daily intake is for hemp seed powder products. So that's that 50%, those protein powders or those base flour, FLOUR, flour products. Now going into a little bit of a comparison, this one's just looking at protein content, hemp seed grain, 33%. Even though soybean has a little bit more, hemp seed doesn't have those trypsin inhibitors. So this is some of the benefits as we look at the breakdown of different foodstuffs and their protein content. So hemp is right up there at the top. So looking at the protein, fat, and fiber, looking at hemp seeds, soybean, and wheat, flax, and canola, as you can see from the list, it varies substantially. Even though, let's say, canola looks like in this graph, oh, canola has more fat, but what are those fats? And how do those fats break down? So that starts to look at when you're really wanting to drill down into the information. Okay, what's the protein content and what's its digestibility? What is that fiber? And that carbohydrates as fiber, is that coming from dietary fiber or is that in the form of sugar? So that also starts to break down further when you're looking at which one of and how does hemp compare to these other commodities. Again, looking at that protein content versus digestibility. So hemp might have a slightly lower protein content than soybeans, again, depending on the type of soybean in the raw state versus a cooked state, but it's that digestibility that we're looking at. So hemp has a much higher digestibility and higher biological value of that digestibility than some of the others. And then you're weighing out that protein content versus that digestibility. So this is another snapshot of looking at those key commodity components. Again, won't look over all of these, but in general, we have around 65% fat, around that 20 to 35% protein, and then those carbohydrates. And in this case, the carbohydrates are, again, as dietary fiber. Hemp is innately gluten-free. However, cross-contamination can impact final results. This is key to work with your growers on presenting the fact that they've got to keep everything clean. Equipment needs to be clean so that you are able to get that international codex of 20 parts per million or less to make that gluten-free claim. Now here's looking at gluten-free powders. This is approximately 1 cup in comparison. So you can see we outstand all the protein, dietary fiber, iron, omega-3, folate, just a few of the attributes you can pull out when we're talking about incorporating this into a gluten-free product or adding a gluten-free powder to your product. Now looking at plant-based oils, one of the unique things about hemp, as you can see from this chart, we have stearidonic acid and gamma-linoleic acid. Those are very unique, long, super and polyunsaturated fats that then end up picking up some of the short chains to making longer in your body so that you can then synthesize those in different ways. So this is one of the key attributes that they're getting from hemp that you're not getting from other common table oils. Again, another sheet looking at the different plant-based oils, how those break down in your saturated, mono, and polyunsaturated fats. Again, hemp at that top list, but noting the fact that it does have a smoke point, so we do not suggest hemp be used as a hot fry oil. Some of those unique fatty acids that I pointed out previously, looking at gamma-linoleic acid and stearidonic, you can see they're present in hemp, evening primrose, and borage. Even though borage may have more, this is more of a unique oil that is mostly in the supplement market and is not added on a table oil scenario. So hemp really gives you that perfect balance of stearidonic and gamma-linoleic as a table oil, which you will not get from olive oil or flax oil. The array of vitamins and minerals, again, these are only some of them that I've highlighted, but looking at that copper, magnesium, and iron, that trifecta, and then adding manganese, magnesium, phosphorus, and calcium in there. So you're really getting a nice, robust array of vitamins and minerals. And also looking at those vitamin Bs, the thiamine, riboflavin, folate, B6, niacin, also very high in all of these products, and you can add those in to build up the nutrient level in your finished product. So going on, I wanted to present some of the peer-reviewed work that has been done on some of these products. There's more research growing daily. I always suggest check out Google Scholar. It's a really great way to be able to type in those keywords and find these peer-reviewed work, looking at the comparison of hemp foods, fiber, feed, you name it. Just put those keywords in there and you'll find more work that's coming on, and also to help, as members of the industry, fund these different types of research projects that are needed to really be able to drive these industries. So looking particularly at hemp protein research, the conclusion was hemp protein can now be included as a beneficial plant protein for kidney health, whereas pea protein should be regarded with a caution. This is from that researchers, and you can find this dietary soy and hemp pea proteins to the standard renal disease progression. So this is looking at these very serious impacts of including not only hemp but other products into your diet. Fatty acid health, looking here at these unique, like amylinoleic acid, for instance, that may reduce diabetes. Ceridonic increases levels of blood plasma by James Attell, 2003. So different cardiovascular attributes as consuming these fatty acids. Heart health, again, stated that dietary hemp seed appeared to provide significant cardioprotective effects due to its high enriched polyunsaturated fat content. A few different research projects here suggesting that we're seeing those significant benefits. Triglycerides also showing that in hemp milk can lead to the reduction of serum triglycerides and serum cholesterol content. So this is good for helping bring down and help to lower those triglycerols and thus lower that cholesterol content. Also looking at Callaway on hemp seed health on body and skin, significant reduction in transdermal water loss, which this is really good for helping prevent dryness and itchiness, decrease in dermal medication over time, and helping the skin retain those lipids with long-term hemp seed oil usage. And hemp seed oil you can take both as a topical, as I said earlier, a drizzle, or just as a supplement by taking just a tablespoon a day. Really comes down to that versatility of this product, looking at the array of hemp food products that are out there, which ingredients are used, what attributes you're looking for, and getting creative, like press cake. Let's put it in some beer brews. Maybe you can do some talk about fermentation, maybe in kombucha, these different types of products that you can really get inventive and incorporate the different products in depending on what outcome you're looking for. I just want to say a big thanks for your interest and attention today, and to all the other speakers, volunteers, organizers, and to yourself, the delegates at today's conference, for your time and hemp energy. I want to just take a moment to invite you over to visit the Hemp Industries Association, the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, and of course, if you have any questions, please reach out to our team, check out our site. We have various aspects of our team working in development, in our additional commodities as the faba beans, lentils, and flax come online, and also as a driver into those association teamwork. So I want to thank you for your time, and y'all enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll go on into the question and answer period.
Thank you, Anndrea. Anndrea is remote, but I do believe we have her wired in to take any questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hand.
Oh, I see double me. Hello, everybody.
Hey there. There's about 35 of us in the room here, and I'll kick off with one question here, Anndrea. Being that you're in a different part of the world there, what are the regulations as far as working with any agency like the FDA or DEA or something in that regards? If there's an adult choice in Canada and here in the US we don't have that, how have you found the regulators in working with them? Is it a peaceful come together? Is there challenges along the way?
Yeah, our framework changed some years back. We used to have a hemp division and then, say, marijuana division. So adult access, medical access, and then we had the hemp section. So they were separate, still underneath Health Canada and the Office of Controlled Substances. But when the Cannabis Act came on, now they put all cannabis under basically one office. So from that did change and did simplify what was going on overall. Now you have an online portal where you can go on and renew your license. It's super easy. I don't care if you're in New Brunswick, Manitoba, Northern Territories, where you're at, it's the same system. So that's really nice. Before, you'd have to fill out these schedules every single year over and over again. And typically farms aren't moving. Where you store your information isn't moving. So it was really onerous to have to go through that. So they streamlined that process, which I love the fact I can just go in and say, hit renew, and it renews my license. We went from annual license to 5-year licenses, which is also great for your site license. And then you have to report your place of cultivation within 30 days of planting. So it gives you that flexibility, because often you'd want to apply for your license in January. Well, by the time May came around, or planting season came around for you, May and June, things had changed on your farm. You're in another field, so you'd have to amend the license. And so it became very tiresome to be able to deal with that. So a lot has streamlined. I find that the Office of Controlled Substance, the Cannabis Act Division, is really actually game to improve the industry. And they're game to understand, even though we did, when that changeover happened, we lost a lot of that institutional knowledge. So there had to be a lot of reteaching on both sides and learning how to work now within a system that is both regulating and experiencing the crossover of marijuana, we'll say, on one, and then hemp on the other. Here in Canada, our regulations for particularly, let's just talk about CBD, is CBD falls outside of the hemp regulations at a certain point. So our farmers are allowed to grow CBD high types, as long as they're under that 0.3% THC delta 9 in the field. They can grow a high CBD type. They can harvest all the flower, the chaff, whatever they're wanting to take. But we in the hemp industry don't have the right then to further process that. If you want to further process that material, then you have to be underneath the marijuana side of the Cannabis Act. So there's a change over there where hemp farmers can do it, but then we have a hard time now reaping the benefit of that. And then it's put into the hands of adult use or medical, which is not just like, we can't just go pick it up at the local Sev or the local 7-Eleven or at Shoppers or some sort of like Walmart-y type place. So we are being held back on some levels, but wanting to advance that. And they understand the limitations, but it is nice though that we have one law, we all function under it, and that makes it really simple, so we're not having to deal with one state law versus another as we do in the US. And I'm originally from Missouri, if y'all, as per my bio.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay, our next presenter is going to speak about a subject that's very interesting, because after his presentation, we're invited to use our adult choice to go and have a reception. If there is potentially some alcohol there, you can use your adult choice and consume that in this building. It's private property, and you might even be able to walk around with it. Best of my knowledge is with cannabis, you buy it and have to go home. So I am waiting to hear what Cole Peacock has to say about Florida's first and only cannabis cafe.
Thank you, everybody.
Do they just move that automatically? Is there a clicker or something? Just hit it forward. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? I think you're ready for your cocktail. I'll run through this. We'll get some questions. I'll make sure you can get out there and get you a nice adult beverage. But I am Cole Peacock, and honored to be here. And as you can see on the screen, we created and founded a Seed and Bean Market, and we've got 2 locations. The first one's in Fort Myers, second is in Venice. Holly, I see back there. Holly was instrumental in allowing us to pursue this, work with the state of Florida, specifically with FDACS, and really come together to see if we could do this. So quick history on kind of where it's at. You can see on the far one over there is a Fort Myers store. Up close to you here is the Venice store, and gives you some insight to what the stores look like. In the middle there, that is our signature coffee. So every time you come in and get a cup of coffee, whether you have CBD added to it or not, you get a nice little stencil drawing on your coffee to let you know where you are. So it was not easy to accomplish. I'll start there. So as Florida went through the medical marijuana side of things, that is when I kind of got involved in the business and in the industry with the constitutional amendments, especially on the second go-round, helping usher those through the state of Florida. And then legislatively, heavily involved in the Tallahassee marketplace with legislation and what have you. When the federal farm bill was coming together and got passed, I think most of y'all know each state had to submit some sort of guidelines that got approved by the federal government. Again, I mentioned Holly Bell because she was so integral in doing that with the Department of Ag and helping us go through it. And one of the things we noticed is there was the ability for us to do a cannabis cafe. And if we fell within the guidelines that were registered with the state of Florida and at the federal level, it gave us somewhat of a loophole. So we looked at it. We wanted to find a way to be in the marketplace and find a niche that no one was doing. So we went back, started this in 2018 is when we started working on it. We opened in 2019, but let me kind of lay the groundwork for where we had to go with that. So as with medical marijuana being allowed in the state, each region and or city, municipality, county can accept or decline the ability to sell those for their dispensaries. We kind of fell in the same part of that because we were introducing cannabis into the marketplace. Even though it was hemp and CBD, it was on a retail market, it was under food, it was mixed in with beverage. So we found ourselves in a unique location that, an experience that we had to work with the municipalities to the point where most people had never done before. So as we started doing this, the first thing that had to happen is the city had to write an ordinance. I worked with the city of Fort Myers and the council and the mayor's office to craft a regulatory and ordinance to allow for this to take place that coincided with the MMTC laws that we had to pass in Lee County and Fort Myers as well. Before we opened this, we took a chance. We exercised the lease on the piece of property. We created our menu. We created what we wanted to do. We worked with FDACS, and then from there, we had to get approval on the municipality level. So we had a educational series where we had the state attorney's office, we had the sheriff's office, the police department, the city council, the state legislature for our area. We had the attorney general's office, everyone you could think of that would potentially stop us from doing this. We sat them in a room, we had an education program, and sat down and said, okay, this is what we're doing, this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna cook with certain things, we're gonna use hemp oil, we're gonna use CBD, we're gonna infuse it into foods, we're gonna be very creative. And here's the rules, here's what the state of Florida says, here's what the federal government says, and we got the sign off by everybody. Otherwise, the day we opened, we would have shut down. So if I can stress anything to you in this industry, work with your legislative body, work with your city municipalities, work with your neighbors, work with people inside your marketplace that can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. Partnerships go a long way in this industry, especially we're still kind of at the ground level, and things are going to shift and change, so make sure you have those relationships. So I mentioned kind of how we were, somewhat of a cutting edge. What we did is we found ourselves as trailblazers, the first in the marketplace to do it. And just for records, this is the only cannabis cafe that's been approved and registered in the state of Florida. There's two in the U.S. There's one that's out in California, which has a little bit of a different concept than we do. There's a separation there where you can purchase and smoke at the facility, and then they have food on the other side. So two concepts in the U.S. that seem to be working fairly well, and we're proud of that. One of the things that we did to ensure it, you can kind of look and get a feel for what it looks like at our stores. It is a very relaxed atmosphere. It is part of the community. We support local not-for-profits, we support high schools, we support education, we support all the programs around there, so that this is not seen as a weed shop or as a place you can go to. You know, when you walk into the location that we have, in either location, you're liable to see someone in dreadlocks wearing a tie, a deputy that just got off their beat. You're able to see kids and dogs and moms and pets. And I mean, it is a place where we created a welcoming atmosphere and really wanted that diverse audience, so that it covered everybody, A, but B, it showed kind of the community that it's okay to be in the cannabis industry, and it's okay to be sitting somewhere where our logo has a coffee cup with a pot leaf on it. And that's not always the case in society today. So we're really proud of that. One of the things that we continue to do is push the product lines that we have and ensure that everything we do is triple tested. You know, there was some of the conversations of testing labs before. Everything that we do in that store has been triple tested. There's got a QR code on it. If the test results come up and you don't like it and approve of it, we'll get rid of it, but we don't carry it unless we approve of it as well. Every product that is not our own product that we bring in, we test again to ensure that those products and test results are exactly what they say they are. So we're trying to create one of the safest atmospheres that we can. This kind of gives you a snapshot of why we think we have been somewhat successful in what we're doing. This is just a snapshot of the groups that we partner with, and it ranges from Children's Advocacy, which is a children's abuse center, to working hard to get the Fresh from Florida approval. I tell you, that means the world to us, because all of our products are Fresh from Florida approved. So we went through the process with the Department of Ag. They signed off on it. We put that stamp out there as much as we can, because it is not an easy thing to get the Department of Ag to sign off on stuff like that, especially when it's new products. And you know, Holly, how old is the cannabis office? What are we, 3 years old, 4 years old, 3 years old? So as we work through that process, it's been a learning curve for them as well as for us. And you know, again, snapshot of what we do, and being engaged in the community and being part of the community also helps take away whatever stigma there has been about the cannabis industry as a whole. So we talk again about the community, and one of the things we're just very proud of is being a part of that. And again, a warm, loving place. We've had some great opportunities on the middle bottom there. For those of y'all that listened to hip hop in the late 80s and early 90s, that's Nappy Roots. We got to hang with them for a while. They came into the shop and loved it. Did some concerts and played around with them for a few days. On the other side there, we've already started to receive industry appreciation awards and business awards and accolades for. We've gotten cooking awards throughout events. So we're just trying to be engaged and doing our part, not only to have one of the best places in the area, but also to work through whatever stigma there may be. This is a little snapshot about CBD. How many of y'all know what CBD is? Yeah, most everybody here. So I can run through that a little bit and skip through some of the stuff. One of the things that we have noticed from the industry innovation side of things is there's constantly products and new products coming out. And one of the things we really cherish is the partnerships we built with the farmers that we use. You know, Treadwell Farms is one of our main partners, and working with them, you know, on a routine basis, going to the farm, understanding, you know, the organic process they're growing with, all the extraction processes. They partner with us on many different occasions on how to create new products and what does a recipe look like that we're going to be cooking with, whether it's a granola bite that we make or whether it's infused sauces that we have with our avocado fries, or the water-soluble products we put into the coffees, or the hemp seeds we put in the salads, or the hemp oils, or the CBD that we put into the protein shakes using hemp protein. So we've really enjoyed those relationships in making sure that we do everything we can possible to put a level of safety to all of our consumers, because we've got kind of a double side of it. Is you're not only able to purchase CBD products at our marketplace and use them as you will, but we're also cooking with them. We're also using them in an infused basis. So we want to make sure whatever we're putting out there meets all of the requirements, A, and B, follows whatever rules that are out there from an FDA and a food side of things, because we do fall into some of those categories with the recipes that we have. I think most people know the difference between hemp and marijuana, so we can kind of move through that. Anyone not understand how CBD interacts with the endocannabinoid system? All right. So on the back side of this, one of the things we were able to do is create our own CBD brand called Pure Native. Just so happens we have a marketplace, we can sell it out, so it's a pretty good win when you can double up on your customer sales. But we've done a couple unique things. One of the tinctures there is a water soluble. We use that probably the most, not only from a cooking standpoint, but also with a lot of our patrons, because you can take that water soluble and drop it into anything. There's no oil residue to it. It is what it is. It's a water soluble based CBD, so we add it in our coffees. My wife and I, Rachel, who's sitting here every morning, wake up, one of the first things we do is put in our cup of coffee and go about our day. We add that into a variety of mocktails that we've created our own recipe lines with CBD mocktails, and it also goes really well with marinaras and all kinds of salad dressings that already have an oil base to it if you don't want those oils fighting each other. One of the things you'll see in the middle, this is one we're super proud of, is we were one of Florida's first approved CBD seltzers. Again, fresh from Florida, seal on that, again, triple tested. Everything's organic on there, and we've had great success with it. We've got a watermelon blend and a mango passion fruit blend. I'll give you a little secret. If you like tequila or vodka, get the CBD watermelon seltzer. It's really, really, really good. It'll set you just right. So we've been proud to do that under the Seed and Bean Pure Native taglines, which is our CBD line. I mentioned the farming and the partnerships with that. We've had such great relationships doing that and making sure that our product from seed to sale is high quality, tested the right way, gone through the triple testing requirements that we require on top of what the state of Florida requires. It's allowed us to be creative with product. It's allowed us to stand by our product lines and ensure it. And we use a lot of the same stuff that I'm talking about at our stores at Seed and Bean. And again, this will give you a snapshot kind of what Pure Native at Seed and Bean does. We've got a nice line of stuff. You can see all the different seals of approval we have down there and how we market these things. The dog treats are a winner for sure. And we're getting to the point where we think we can almost make those dog treats in-house. We've got a company we partner with right now that does them, but again, always tinkering what you have and trying to make it a little better for the pets. So that's a good quick snapshot, because I know y'all are probably ready for your drinks over here. But if there's any questions about the Seed and Bean Marketplace, how we got there, really what we had to go through, I will tell you that we've got the Venice location that's opened. We are currently looking at about 3 or 4 other locations in the state. We are looking outside the state, and we get asked just about every single time we go somewhere, if we're franchising, how can I do it in Tennessee? How can I do it in Alabama? How can I do it in Colorado? How can I do it in California? So it's an interesting place we find ourselves, and it's all I can do is, if you're down in Southwest Florida from Venice to Fort Myers, swing in and see us. I think you'll get the vibe firsthand, and you'll probably ask us how you can be a part of it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Hang on one second.
Did you get any pushback at all from any of the places that you tried? And
Yes.
If you did, what did you do about the pushback?
Yeah, so we got pushback from the whole industry, to be honest with you, because it hadn't been done before, and we couldn't do it, and we didn't have the relationships, and we were going to cook the CBD at too high of a level. It's going to generate THC. I mean, anything and everything you could think of happened to us. Where one of the main reasons we chose Fort Myers is because of relationships that I have and the founders have with some of the other folks. It was an easier conversation to have. When we went to Venice, Sarasota County, the conversations were a little more difficult, but we had a friend, the mayor in Fort Myers at the time, made a phone call to their mayor and said, hey, listen to these guys. They're going to do it the right way. They're not just coming in. They're not going to be green blinking lights that people are smoking joints on the end of the street corner. So there was quite a bit of pushback in a lot of different areas. The one thing that I mentioned before is find your relationships with your leaders in your community, have conversations with them, get to know them, show them what you're doing, because there's still a massive education component to this whole industry, to the masses, that needs to take place.
Any other questions?
I've got one.
Yes,
Cole,
sir.
Did you run into any business banking, merchant financing, those type of problems in dealing with the store once you started it?
Yeah, we did. So originally, we could not find a bank, especially the big banks, the Bank of Americas, the Chases, what have you, did not want to do it. So we, again, went and talked to local banks and explained to them what we were doing, that everything was federally legal, that this has been passed on the federal level. The state of Florida had been approved to run their hemp and cannabis through the federal guidelines and the state guidelines that were approved. The legislature approved it. So that helped in the conversation. But it was a local bank, and that local bank is taking really good care of us and took a risk on us. To your point of POS systems, Clover right now is who we're using, and they were the most open to it. There are some catches with it. You've got to use certain words in your reporting and or marketing with some of the POS systems. For example, the bank, they prefer us to use a general term and not get into the specifics of a marijuana or a hemp. It's more of a CBD or a cannabis as a whole, because it gives them a little bit of coverage. But that was a significant challenge. The other challenge that we faced was dealing with our food vendors. Not all of them were comfortable coming in and working with a cannabis cafe, because they didn't know. They figured that everything that was going to be there was a different situation than it is now. The food vendor that we use, we have presented to them to carry our pure native seltzers on a state and national level. So the relationships can be built. There can be trust and honest conversations, and once those are built, that trust level is there. But it wasn't easy. There's no two ways around it. But then again, when you start something from scratch and you're one of the first ones to do it, and you're creating your own path and a path for everybody else, it's never easy. Yes, sir.
Question here.
Hold on one sec, please.
Excuse me. I have two questions. First is, how did you convince the landlord to rent you the space in the CBD, especially people eating at the location? And second is, your edibles, are they being made off-site, or are they made in the restaurant?
Okay, so I'll do the second one first, because it's easier than the first. The edibles, we have a combination of both. So I'll give you an example. So you can come to our shop and get fresh donuts with CBD icing that we make in-house, and they may range from a Fruit Loop icing to a typical glazed donut, right? You can get brownies and cookies that we make in-house. Some are just with hemp flower and no CBD. Some have CBD infused with them. So that we make internally. Now, for most of the products that are being sold as a CBD product and edible, we've got a relationship with a group that does those kind of at a mass level. But anything in that store that we have on the menu that you purchase from us, we make in-house. At the marketplace, which is why it's called CBD Market, is there's a CBD component market to it that you can buy other products. The products that we sell are ours. Joy's, Social, we've got a very select group. But that's the second part of your question. The first part, landlords. The space we went into, the original space, was originally a coffee shop. So the concept of having a cafe was not something they had to be educated on. What they had to be educated on is how we were going to use CBD in that component. The reality of it is landlord looked at us and said, okay, well, it's a high risk, so we're going to charge you about 1.5 more on our lease agreement than we're charging the other folks. And if it works out for you, we'll do it, and we'll readjust the agreement, which they've done. So they took a risk on us. It worked out. In this space, most of the landlords kind of know there's a 1.5 to 3x that they can charge anyone in the cannabis space because of the risk factor to it.
So you use local landlords. It wasn't a nationwide.
It's both. So there's a local group that's owned by a national group. So it's both.
Are you asking that because you've come across some resistance, or?
Yes and yes.
Okay. There's some people here you can talk to. There's a process with FDACs to get the retail hemp permit. I got mine the 1st January it came out, and I'm not sure what your approach is. In my local community where I opened up a retail store, it was a health and wellness store, and there wasn't a whole lot of banter. It wasn't quite the scale of what they did and whatnot, but you know, there's going to be some people here that will definitely get more granular.
I would say that's a great point. I mean, you get your licenses first, get squared away. If you've got a brick and mortar kind of a retail shop, you know, your chances of opening are going to be much easier than trying to create a cafe that's never been done before. From a retail component, you know, it's really an exchange side of things, and you don't have to meet all the same food inspections, the health inspections. You know, there's so many different things we have to meet because we've combined essentially 3 components to a concept.
Let me ask another question. Adam, since you're a store owner, have you run into similar circumstances that Cole has, or is what you've gone through different?
I've already got on his calendar for 2 more hours after this to talk about how do you change your language so you don't broadcast that you have items here that may benefit your health and wellness or help get a good night's sleep. There's such a, I'd hate to use the word suppression, but in the industry, that'd be the thing that bothers me the most is, especially on the website side, that's where I started my business. And even if you have a Square I was with for 2.5 years, they suspended me, and during the suspension, they were actually one of the ones that went back and forth with me and said, you have to remove this. And then by about 6 months into that process, they were going into my Instagram post from a year ago, and if I had a hashtag...
Doing the deep dive of what you said, right.
I realized it was just a race to the bottom of me sanitizing my entire Insta existence, and have had to go through a different mid-tier processor. And I've noticed in the past year, because it seems to happen about every 8 months, you lose a processor, the scrutiny has become extremely high. They've gotten much better at the COA scrutiny. They've gotten much better at your social media presence. And it's interesting. I came here to get a lot of answers to some questions like that, and looking forward to Holly's presentation tomorrow.
Zito, you taking notes on this? Because she's going to be talking about the banking end of the business side on Sunday.
So 3 times, to that point, 3 times our website had been shut down. I can't tell you how many times our Facebook page has been shut down. We've had to actually go back because we post our menu online at our website and change some of the language and descriptions on our menu. So there's still a learning curve on all fronts. Square, we went through the same thing, but they were actually pretty good to work with. And we've been able to continue to work with them. Again, I mentioned Clover earlier. Clover's been the best for us from a point-of-sale system, but as you're marketing, make sure that you are very careful, you're somewhat generic, and you use words that people can identify with your product.
Quick question. Dr. Donato's online, and I think he's got his hand raised on the screen, so we're going to let him chime in.
Very interesting. And so my question is, when is the clinic going to open? You have a cafe, when are you going to open the clinic?
Well, I'm sorry, the question was?
When are you going to open the clinic? You have the cafe, you need a clinic.
It is a clinic because when you come there, the benefit is your endocannabinoid system is going to get the cannabinoids, but it has to be postured in a different way.
So, kind of can work as a clinic in some level. We've got several CBD educators that sit there behind the counter that we have that can walk you through your treatment of needs, whether it's sleep, whether it's anxiety, whether it's muscle pain, what have you. But if you're asking more specifically about other kinds of clinic, we've branded our name multiple ways, whether it's weed and bean, seed and bean, some other stuff. So, we may have a variety of different things going out there. But one of the things we found, especially during the height of COVID, was so many people dealing with whatever they never knew before, whether their pets being home and how anxious their pets were, or they really had anxiety they didn't have before. And I feel like I'm bragging on Holly, but again, working with her department and with Florida Department of Business Professional Regs, they allowed us to stay open under the wellness component. So we were able to stay open essentially as a wellness clinic, and had the benefit of being able to serve bulk food. And for those who needed toilet paper, we were lucky to have Cheney as a large restaurant vendor. And even though it was restaurant-style toilet paper, we were still able to sell it, and it moved a lot. But it was, for a good 4 or 5 months, it really kind of operated as a wellness clinic solely.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
Since cannabis as a topic in the media has been somewhat villainized over the past 100 years, and it's lately coming out, a lot of the mindsets, and especially if you haven't come into the cannabis world for a health reason or whatnot, you still might have that stigma attached to it. I imagine some people in the legislative and legal parameters might retain that. What was your biggest punch through when moving with this momentum and with the different bullet points? What was one of the couple of top tier things? Like for me, it seems like it might be the endocannabinoid system and the fact that it's right there in the National Institute of Health. You can't refute it. It's not a concept, it's facts and science. What were some of your punch throughs where they let's call it side or whatnot, just couldn't turn away and say, well, you're.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd be able to point to endocannabinoids easy. I mean, in our store, we've got a big wall that has the picture I showed up there, so when people walk in, they can see exactly what it's at. The other punch through, I think, really was going through the process, getting the licenses insured, making sure they were there, and really being able to work with the Department of Ag and get that fresh from Florida seal. That seemed to take away a lot of questions from people, because they're used to seeing it on your orange juice. If you buy orange juice, it's got a fresh from Florida seal. If you buy lemonade in the state of Florida, it has a fresh from Florida seal. Most of your ag products brag about having it. That was a big one for us. And it took away a lot of the conversation of whether we should trust these people or not, because, well, the state signed off on it, so it's got to be. The other, I think, was what I'm doing right now, is getting out and talking to as many groups as you can, building a level of trust. But I think, to a large degree, the Martha Stewarts of the world. And I don't really want to brag about Martha Stewart, but when you see it on a large platform, there's a whole bunch of people that read whatever her magazine name is, that see Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart together talking about CBD and hemp and weed and whatever else. That changes people's perspective pretty quick. Now, I don't want her to take over the market and take everything away from us, but take advantage of it and play up to it. But I think the biggest thing, again, is the education component. It really is getting in front of people, like sitting here today. The fact that all of y'all are here, the fact that we've got people putting on a conference like this was unheard of 5 years ago, and especially in the state of Florida. Sit with local leaders, sit with local not-for-profits, find some agencies you can partner with, show the benefits of it, and everything else I think will come into play. Anything else? No? You sure? Going once? Yes, sir.
Greetings, my name is Javon Bell. I attend Florida A&M University. I'm a second in agribusiness. And the question I want to ask is, what are the pros and cons of starting a business like this?
The pros is, I think seeing something that you have an idea of to conceptual, and being able to wake up every day and have something that you're really, really proud of, right? The other pro to it is helping people, whether it's on the wellness side or the education side. For me, probably the biggest one is knowing that when people come to the stores, it's a safe place for them. It's a diverse place. It's something that they feel good about coming to. The food's really good. That's a given. But the location and the atmosphere, it is, we call it, one of the best places to chill in the state of Florida, and it really is just like that. The other pro to it is it's yours. You own it. You can stand by it. You're proud of it. and you're doing something that somebody else hasn't done before. The difficulties?
We may not have that much time.
Yes, sir. The difficulties are everything you can think of. You know, it's how do you finance it? You know, how do you keep the payroll going? How do you find the proper employees? How do you make sure your product is a product you can stand behind? Is your marketing okay? I mean, all the things you could think of, those are the difficult sides of it. I don't see, none of those would stop me ever again, and they didn't stop us before, and I don't think they should stop you or anything else you're trying to accomplish, but I think the biggest thing you can do is make sure your idea is viable. Run it across your friends, let your peers pick it apart. And if it's something you really believe in, keep fighting to get it forward and keep proving them wrong. Your biggest supporters and your biggest critics are your friends.
And I'd like to add a little to that, having a much smaller financed operation and still kind of living close to my wallet here. The pros are the helping people. I mean, when somebody comes back the second time, it means it worked. And
That's right.
When someone says they've been on a pain med for 4 or 5 years and it just stopped working and they thank you for it, it's amazing, and especially when you don't have a medical degree. So that forced me to dig deeper and deeper, and that's what's carried me through some of the dark times, because when your credit card processor does get shut down and you're offline for 45 days and you're not driving revenue, that's why I opened the retail store, was to have that, and then that became a more personal experience. So if you're looking to get into an industry that's going to help people, and a lot of folks look at the medical profession towards that, I applaud you for looking into the cannabis industry. As a young person, you might see it as a long-term industry, and 10 years ago, I couldn't have done that. When I was in college, I was introduced to it in a different way. It's amazing in our lifetime that you're here able to look at it. I'm not the crystal ball teller, but I'd say probably in the next 5 years, federal law should ultimately go across the nation with at least legalizing it in some fashion. And there's already some, there's been constant legislation for banking, but once that banking barrier is down, I'd say the jobs and the investment is just going to go extremely insane. If you're in that course, you're doing good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so at FAMU, so you said you're in the agribusiness there. What are you studying there? Is it?
Say that again, sir.
Yeah, so at FAMU with ag, you're in the ag business there?
Yes, sir.
What are you studying?
Agribusiness.
As a whole, I mean, do you have a specific area of that?
So the area that I'm pursuing is crop production, like in the growing. It was either crop production, farm management. So those are, the pathways that I'm heading to.
Yeah. Make sure that as you get into the crop production that you have trusted people around you. When you're growing, make sure that you understand what they're telling you if you're not the one growing. Understand how they're chelating, understand the soil, understand what's taking place so that you know what your plant is supposed to produce and look like. There's a huge education component to that, and I'm sure there's a ton of people in the farming industry sitting here that can speak to that, but the other side of it is you're in Tallahassee right now. There's a lot of people that are talking about this. There's a lot of movement up there. Go build your relationships. Don't be afraid to knock on the doors on the hill there and tell them what you're doing and ask them how to go forward and continue to fight for it. And you may find yourself, supporting farmers in a different fashion, but there's so many different opportunities to have because the industry, you're right, the industry's still young, and in the coming years, it's going to evolve and be different, but take advantage of where you're at, especially take advantage that I think FAMU, FGCU, and UF are the only 3 universities in the state that have any sort of cannabis programs. Take advantage of those, use them to the highest level, and don't be afraid to knock on anyone's door to ask them questions or push the initiative forward.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, we'll do it again. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? All right. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, everybody. You help me thank the panel. We're going to, as you can see, today's session was designed to talk about the health aspects of cannabinoids and this whole arena. Tomorrow, we're going to dive deeper into the infrastructure development side, which is where I think the state needs to foster its development. How do we get to the processing? for fiber and textiles, business development that Catherine's going to run, the research related to the growing of the plant, which FIHCE, University of Florida, through Zach, is going to cover tomorrow with his presenters. So I think it's great to get together, to network, and I think that's the value of coming together. I encourage you, the students that are here, to definitely talk with people while you're here. So with that, let's go have a refreshment, and we'll be back here tomorrow morning. Thank you.